Hey, it's Jaffe. Really? I wanted to make a fast video about Kenna Bridge of Spirits. I did a video last week where I was absolutely praising the game. Just thought it was delightful, wonderful, a great surprise, and I still love it. Okay, but I got to a part in the game, and I make this video because I've seen a number of people tweet at me, not a number, but like 7. I guess a number, 7's a number. Tweet at me and say, hey, I saw your impressions of Kenna. I'm going to pick it up or whatever, something like that. And I got to warn you because I got to a point in the game, and I must have played for about 6 hours. And the bosses or mini bosses or whatever, you know, there were a few challenging moments, but nothing felt terribly unfair or unsolvable. It was, you know, a little frustration, but that's okay. And then I got to this boss, Tormented, whatever, the first main boss of the game, and it just collapsed, the fun factor, to the point that I played a little bit afterwards, but I haven't gone back in like 5 days, right? I mean, it literally sucked the fun out of the room for me because it's... I saw people online talking about how the combat was Souls-like, and it was a really hard game, and I'm like, really? Maybe I've just gotten good. I'm like, no, it rarely happens, if ever. But once I got to this boss, I started to understand. I mean, it is a wonderful game. It is brilliantly made. It is a wonderful IP. I still love this game very much, and I hope to be able to muster up the interest to go back and keep playing it because it's just a joy to be in. But, you know, it's so weird to me, right? Because thematically, a game that looks like this and that was marketed like this shouldn't have combat like this. First off, I mean, it can if it wants to. I don't give a fuck, but it just seems there's a mismatch there. It feels like it's more like a not casual kids game at all, but it feels like it's more of an inviting sort of adventure, and combat's there, but it's more like Zelda combat, right? Well, that's one thing, but the combat doesn't start falling apart until, at least for me, until 5-6 hours in. And so even if you would have bought it and played it for 20 minutes and gone, oh shit, this is a mismatch for me of visual and combat difficulty, I didn't realize that, but at least right away you would have known what you're getting into. But this is a game that holds that and reveal until much, much later in the game, and then you're like, what the fuck is this? And it kind of betrays so much of the good faith that it's earned, because it's just like, you know, it's just shitty, man. And it's funny because it's not even just shitty, like, difficult. Like, I liked Demon Souls a lot. I'm not very good at it, but I played that obsessively for about 3 or 4 weeks after I got my PS5 and thought it was just excellent. Really hard, really punishing, but really fair. And in that, I would say almost, if not every time I die in that game, it's totally on me. I'm like, yeah, I just suck. I got to get better. But this is not one of those, you know, get good situations a lot of times. This is a game that is really asking you to do a number of things, but they're not holding up at a developer end, their end of the bargain. There are really sloppy collision hitboxes. There are moves where the enemy will leap towards you and home while it's leaping. So there's, you know, very little you can do except maybe parry, but the parrying in this game is... there's not like in Tsushima where it's a blue or a red sheen to the weapon that lets you know if it's blockable or parryable or not. I'm sure there's some visual cue, but beats the fuck out of me what it is. Talking about this boss battle. There are times where it has this move where this monster will grab you, right? And I was playing it with people online, and I'm like freeze framing it and going back and showing them. It's like the collision of the hand where it grabs you is clearly off to the, or in the center, and you're off to the left or the right, but it still grabs you. And someone says, oh, well, you have to shoot the lantern around its neck when it's doing that. And I could be wrong, but I'll tell you too, that's how you stun the thing, right? And that's pretty easy and pretty obvious. It's the glowing weak point, massive damage, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's that boss right here. I don't have any footage of it. This is just a still frame. But I'll show you the 2 problems with it, at least that I had. One is, in this case, if he grabs her, he'll do like, I think it's like 60 points of her, or 60% of her health bar. It would make sense she would grab her. But there are times where if this is my character, which it obviously is, I'm clearly outside of his grasp. I'm like on the other side of his hand, and it will still play the collision, right? And so what people are saying is, well, the lantern, Jaffe, you have to shoot the lantern. Well, the lantern collision is super spotty that I'll show you in a second. But beyond that, though, it's the only time in the game I can think of, or in this boss battle I can think of, where it says every other time you're fighting him, you can shoot the lantern, but his collision is still avoidable with dodges and rolls and parries or whatever. But for some reason, you're just supposed to magically know or eventually learn through frustration that all of the things it's been training you to do, like how the collision behaves, yeah, that doesn't work in this move. And I'm like, maybe if there were some effects on the thing and you're like, okay, this is kind of a magic move, it makes sense that this one wouldn't be able to be, you know, I don't fucking know. But it just looks like a normal move, and all the other normal moves are avoidable based on parrying and avoidance, or physical avoidance and sometimes parrying, and in this case it's not. And it's just like, it's that kind of sloppy, and or like it's one thing if it's sloppy, it's their first game, they're not a big team, you know, you learn, and it sucks. But at that point I would put the onus on the reviewers to say something, the pro reviewers. I didn't see shit about this kind of stuff. But assuming that it's intentional, like, no, we fucking like that, I think that's really fucking shitty, especially to bury that kind of logic 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours, depending on your skill level, into the game itself. Okay, I want to show you this other thing that's equally frustrating. There's a number of times where I shoot it when it is glowing, but the collision is so spotty on that lantern that I'm like, I totally fucking hit that thing. I've been playing this non-stop, and then it just suddenly had this difficulty spike. And maybe the collision there is so pinpoint that if maybe his chin was coming down on it with he has a mask on right before, maybe, but I mean, when you freeze frame it, it's like, dude, that's a fucking hit, right? So it's like, it on one hand it wants you to, I don't know what it wants. It feels like it's this split personality video game 6 hours in. And I was able to beat the boss. I played it for like an hour and a half online, and everybody's watching it going, most people are watching it going, yeah, this seems cheap. And people are like, you think this is bad, Jaffe? Wait till you get to the last boss and the second to last boss. It just gets more and more and more. And I'm just like, took all the wind out of my sails for this game. I set it to easy to get past the boss. But the minute I did that, now I'm just like, I still really like the game, but now it just kind of feels like, you know, one of the things I loved the most about the game was it felt like it just took care of everything. You know, it kind of reminds me of when I was married, and I would say to my wife when we had kids, we have kids still, but, you know, when they were little and we were married, and it's like, what do you want for Mother's Day? She's like, you know what, I would just like a day where I don't have to do anything. Just you guys take care of everything for me, right? It's like going on vacation. Well, one of the things I loved about this game was, unlike a lot of other games that are single-player action-adventure, it really did feel like it grabbed you by the hand and said, we got you. It's not too easy. It's not too hard. You're not going to have this massive world to explore, and you have to do the work to figure out what you want to collect when. It's like, nah, we're not doing that. Let us entertain you. And then suddenly it gets to this, and it becomes a totally different personality of a game. And now I'm like, it's almost like there was two designers or two directors. Like there was a person tuning it for the first 6 hours, and that person quit or got fired or something. And then they brought in this new person who's like, I really like the Souls games, dudes. Let's make this fucking shit hardcore. And so I'm just like, what the fuck? You know, I went over earlier today before I made this video. I looked at a bunch of the mainstream reviews of this game, and the combat is being praised. So, you know, take it for what you will. If what I'm describing to you sounds great, go have a great time if you're considering buying it. But if you're like me, congratulations, because being me is awesome. But it also, if you're like me, just be aware that this is not, I don't see a lot of this talked about in reviews, certainly not the mainstream reviews. And I think it's a real weakness for this game. And it's real frustrating because the rest of the game is so goddamn delightful. So I just wanted to mention that. I want to make sure that nobody's going off my initial review, even though I love it. I recommend it, but with a very big caveat. Like, you have to be okay you have to be okay being the master of changing the difficulty based on the experience you want. So suddenly it goes from this game that you can just sit back and let the developers do the work of entertaining you, and then it's like, oh, well, now we're going to put that on you. So is this too hard? You can assess that. You want to change it? Right, because the minute I changed it to easy, I beat him in one try. It was just like, there's no real medium difficulty for this game. What they call normal, I think, is on the upper end of hard, and that's real unfortunate. All right, take it easy. See you soon. Bye, everybody.